Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Twice as Lively with Kent Heckenlively. That would be me. And as we always do, we begin with a little bit of wonderful Pete's coffee. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. Okay. All right. Got to get that camera working a little bit better. Okay, so got my wonderful Pete's coffee here, and in honor of the wonderful Scott Adams, who we dearly miss, we're going to do a simultaneous sip. Now, I'm going to do it a little bit differently than Scott did. I'm not going to do that long intro. I'm just going to say, welcome to Coffee and Conversation with me, Ken Heckenlively, drinking wonderful Pete's coffee, which if you haven't had Pete's coffee, I highly recommend them. So get your beverage of choice together and take a sip. Ah, delicious. Nothing like coffee at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, so the title of my broadcast today is The Specter of Constant Worry. Are you worried right now? You might be. I mean, there are a couple things concerning going on in the world, right? There's this war in Iran. Is it going on, or is there going to be a deal? Is the Strait of Hormuz going to be closed, or is it going to stay open? What are Russia and China going to do? Is there an alien invasion imminent? Are secrets going to be revealed? How much is Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day movie going to make on its opening weekend? I mean, these are serious problems, people. We need to be aware. What's going to happen? Well, I'm going to slow it down a little bit for you today and talk about how we can avoid constantly worrying about things. So, probably one of the best things that happened in my life was going to this sunrise program run by this wonderful couple, Barry and Samara Kaufman, uh, located in Massachusetts, and it was to deal with our daughter's very severe autism. How do we create a loving environment when your child cannot communicate and is having constant tantrums? And one of the great things about the Sunrise program is that it encouraged people to ask questions and asking questions until you're satisfied. And so the idea is that the reason we have stress is not because of what we fear, it's because of what we have not dealt with. Now, the man who ran the program, his name was Barry Kaufman, also known as Bears, just a wonderful, delightful man. And he told this story to us, which was about his younger brother, who at the age of somewhere in his early 30s was diagnosed with a very serious cancer. And so Barry went to see his younger brother, who was in the hospital and obviously very worried about things. And Bears, in his inimitable style, said, "Hey, hey, brother, what are you worried about?" And the brother says, "Well, I got cancer." And Bear says, "Okay, what makes you worried about having cancer?" "Well, I might die." "Okay, so you might die. What are you worried about dying for?" "Well, I'm married and I have kids." "Okay, so what are you worried about?" "Well, I might die and my kids won't remember who I was, and my wife might marry somebody else." And Bear says, "Okay, so you die Your kids don't remember you, and your wife marries somebody else. Why does that have you worked up? He goes, well, I don't want to be forgotten. And Bear says, okay, let me give you a thought. You may not know how much time you have left, but what if you were the best person you could be during whatever time you have left? And let's say you were as good of a person as you could be, and yet you still died. Would you be satisfied that that was your legacy? He goes, well, yeah, maybe so. He goes, okay, now what about the cancer? What are you worried about? Well, I don't know what to do. He says, okay, so go through the options. And they went through the options, and his brother calmed down and said, okay, they're wanting me to do these things. I don't think these things are the best, but I do think there are some things I can do. Um, lower my stress, exercise more, eat better, and do some other things. And as the story went on, the the brother survived. But it was a real interesting lesson to me, which was never stop asking questions. And I think that that is something that in this environment where people are not having as many discussions with each other face to face, that's something we need to consider. So for me, whenever I'm faced with stressful situations, I try to remember Bear's advice about never stop asking questions. Get to that place where you are calm. And there are certain struggles. Recently in our family, there's a family member in Canada who is quite sick, and she has recently made the decision that she will take advantage of Canada's assisted suicide laws. And so there's a lot of concern in the family with how to tell other family members. And, you know, my 2 cents worth into it was you just got to do it. You just got to talk about it. And so plans were made, and and the discussions were had, and it actually worked out quite well. Now, I know some people may think that the assisted suicide laws are not good. They're, you know, contrary to maybe to Christian teaching. I'm not really going to offer an opinion one way or the other. It's somebody else's life. They're making the decision, so I'm going to let them make the decisions. But it seems to me that what we do in our minds, what we think, the thoughts that we have are vitally important to our happiness. Now, on a closer level to me, I am making a switch from 20 years of being a California public school science teacher to podcasting, doing my own writing, and doing some ghostwriting. Am I a little bit concerned about that? Yeah, yeah, I am. But it's not life and death, right? And it's been really interesting to me because I'm one of these people who studies success. I am really fascinated by people who are successful and what they do, but also maybe more importantly, what they think. Now, let's just take an example. Me podcasting to you right now. So I've had this idea of doing podcasting for probably about 6, 7 months. And so in those 6 to 7 months, I have mentioned it to people. Oh, I think I'm going to start podcasting when I retire from teaching. And they're like, oh, wow, that's so brave. And it really strikes me as quite odd that they say I'm brave, because I think to myself, I'm just podcasting. I'm just turning a camera on and seeing if I can talk. I'm not putting myself at any physical risk. It's not like I'm going to fall off a cliff here or somebody is going to walk into the room and stab me. But it strikes me that a lot of people live in this world of fear. And it's not fear of something horrible happening to them, like, falling off a cliff or getting stabbed or shot. Although maybe if I become really successful, I'm going to have to worry about being swatted by people who don't like me. But, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. But it strikes me that one of the things that stops people is this fear of ridicule or shame. Maybe it's been 20 years of teaching, but I also think that it's more of my personality. And, you know, maybe some of you have this personality. I seem to have a reputation for being kind of fearless. And I don't really think I'm fearless. I think I do a pretty good risk assessment of what's really dangerous to me. So, podcasting entails very little physical risk. There may be some emotional discomfort, but one of the things that I do in teaching as I'm talking to young people is I encourage them to be fearless, to try things, and to have an understanding that when you try something, you're going to suck at first. Okay? That's just the way it is. If you want to become a champion runner, well, the first time you go out and run a mile, you're not going to run a sub 4 minute mile. Okay? That's just the way it goes. And so the best thing you can do is just throw yourself into the situation and see what happens. Now, there's another trick which I think of as a life hack, which is the more you do something, the better you get at it. And so many people forget this. Now, in the writing world, this was something that was presented to me early on, which was okay, if you want to become good enough to publish books, you need to write 1,000,000 crummy words. That's Stephen King's advice. Okay, so Stephen King, pretty successful guy, right? So 1,000,000 bad words. Okay, I wrote 1,000,000 bad words, and then I got published. But then there was something interesting that I also learned, which is that 80% of people who publish a book never go on to write book number two. So think of it like a pyramid. All right, so there are all these people. I remember going to all the writing classes. Everybody was anxious to be a writer. Well, would they do the work? Well, a certain number of them would do it. And then they reach the summit of that achievement. And then how many of them go on? And when you look at people like Mozart, you look at people like Shakespeare, they're remembered for 4 to 5 great works. But both Spielberg and Mozart were among the most prolific of their time. And there's been some good research that the greatest artists are the most prolific, which makes sense, right? You need to get lots of feedback, figure out what's good and what's bad, and then you can start making adjustments. And so you have to be open to, hey, what's good and what's bad. Now, the best writing teacher I ever had, James Fry, who wrote How to Write a Damn Good Novel, not the guy who wrote 1,000 little pieces or 1,000,000 pieces, who was a liar and had to apologize on Oprah for lying to her. But James Fry always talked about just doing it. Do it, get out there, don't be afraid. So, great advice. So, for me, after I published my first book, it wasn't, how do I sit back on my laurels? It was, what's the next one? And it's been amazing in the 12 years that I've been a published writer that now I'm going at a pace for 3 to 4 books a year. And it's fun, it's enjoyable, it's good to be skilled. I'm not going to say talented, I'm going to say skilled. I am a very skilled writer. Does that mean I have talent? Well, I'll let other people say that, but I think that talent is only the accumulation of a lot of critical feedback and then you making adjustments, whatever that is. So if you want to be good at something, do it. Do it a lot. You'll get better. You'll get skilled. And hey, maybe you'll even be talented at it eventually. Okay, so couple things in the news. So I want to talk a little bit about this book, Catastrophic Disclosure, because I'm getting a little bit of heat and attention on me, and I want to talk a little bit about it. So I went on the Grant Stinchfield show. Grant's a wonderful guy, just in case any of you are wondering what he's like behind the scenes. But before I went on Grant's show, they sent an email to my publicity gal and were saying, is there anything really exciting that Kent can talk about? You know, the book published 6 months ago, so what's new? Well, as I said, I continue to work on books, and one of the books that I'm continuing to work on does deal with the UFO issue. And so I had recently received some intelligence that the Trump administration was considering a new executive order, and it was more than they were considering it. It was that it was something that was imminent within a period of weeks, and there were some specific provisions to that order, which tied in to the end of this book, which was a document that Dr. Stephen Greer sent to the White House, suggesting what an executive order would look like. And it had a couple important parts to it. Number one, those scientists who had, or engineers or employees who had signed non-disclosure agreements with the government to work on these secret programs, which might be reverse engineering alien technology, could consider those NDAs null and void. Now, the legal reason is because when Congress spends money on a program, they are supposed to have oversight over it. So if these programs were spending money without Congress knowing about it, they are by definition unconstitutional, and the NDAs would be null and void. This was the argument that Dr. Stephen Greer had made. I just have to say, one of the smartest guys in terms of dealing with bureaucracies. In my conversations with him, one of the things that he talked about is how in the 90s, he had sent a letter to all the agencies, a so-called unless otherwise directed letter, which laid out his theory that these programs were unconstitutional, and that if any of the agencies had a different interpretation, that they were required by law to tell him that. And then, unless otherwise directed, he was going to proceed as if these programs were unconstitutional, and therefore he was free to talk to anybody who worked in these programs. I thought it was a really good argument, and I think it's got a lot of validity to it. So, one, the existing NDAs are null and void. Part number two is that there are allegations that crimes may have been committed in these programs. Now, those crimes could range in anything from lying to Congress, lying to the American public. There have been allegations of kidnappings, of murders, of whistleblowers. And depending upon the severity of the crime, amnesty is a possibility. But like in South Africa after apartheid, the only way they could really unravel that problem was to offer amnesty under certain conditions. Condition number one would be testifying fully and truthfully about it. And number two, expressing genuine remorse and seeing what people think. And so to my understanding, that had worked quite successfully in South Africa. Some people may disagree with that, but at least it was a good framework. And part number three was that there would be a certain period of time when people who possess documents about these programs could turn them over to the appropriate agency, probably the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. And after that time, their failure to turn over those documents would be grounds for disciplinary action in their job, civil penalties, or criminal penalties. So that was big news when I reported it on Grant Stinchfield. And in the time since that, many people have come forward to confirm outlines of my story. Congressman Eric Burleson's office, as I understand it, has confirmed part of that story, and other outlets have as well. So, yay, I'm making some news in the UFO space. That still doesn't mean I know what's going to happen next. But from writing Catastrophic Disclosure, I've come to a couple conclusions. Now, I'm always willing to change my conclusions in light of new evidence. But I think I did a really good, skeptical, and yet curious look at the UFO issue. And I was really heartened by the comments of the publisher of Skeptic magazine, Michael Shermer, who I had done an interview with. So imagine me, a guy who wrote a book about UFOs, talking to the leading skeptic in the world, or most well-known skeptic probably on the American scene. We had a delightful discussion. And we had a delightful discussion because both of us realized that we're in the dark here. And what we're doing at best is making educated guesses about what's going on. Now, the difference between me and Michael Shermer is that he sees a pattern of telephone tag, for lack of a better way of saying it. Somebody saw something, they said something to somebody else, and then it went on and on and on like that. Okay, I got it. That, there's some validity to that. Whereas I look at documents and I look at probabilities. Now, one of the things that struck me very early on in this investigation of UFOs is that if you report a UFO, your life is going to suck afterwards. And I don't think people willingly endure that kind of ridicule and pain. I just don't buy I want everybody to look at me, so I'm going to talk about UFOs idea. It seems crazy. It seems counterintuitive to what I know about human beings. If I was going to make a guess based upon what I know about human beings, I would guess that only 1 out of 5 people who see a UFO actually talk about it. And maybe that's a liberal view. Maybe it's like 1 in 10, 1 in 20. But from the work I've done with whistleblowers, I know that people really don't like to separate themselves from the herd. And so something's going on that makes these people separate themselves from the herd. The other thing I looked at is documents and over the years. Uh, in researching catastrophic disclosure, I paid a lot of attention to the 1952 Washington, D.C. series of sightings, which were reported on by Life magazine. And if you go back and you read those accounts, it's really clear that they don't know what's going on. So my frame of reference is why in 1952 was Life magazine, which was the most credible source of information, it's not like they were the National Enquirer of their day, why were they reporting UFOs as real phenomena? Well, in the most recent release of documents from the government, there was something called the Twining Memo, which was a memo from the Chief of Air Force Intelligence to the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. All right, so it don't get much higher than that. And they listed 5 or 6 characteristics of these craft, all consistent with what we hear today. Now, the other difference that Michael Shermer and I had is that I believe that there are intelligent people in the intelligence agencies. And if they were reporting stuff like this in 1947, I think that a couple intelligent people in the intelligence agencies probably have been doing something for the past 79 years. And if they haven't been doing something, they probably need to. So I made a little bit of news with what I said on Grant Stinchfield. It's been confirmed, but yet no order has come out from the White House yet. My suspicion is that it's likely to either come out just before Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day movie, because Trump likes to do shit like that, or it's probably going to be done before the 4th of July. In a recent cabinet meeting, which was broadcast, Trump made the statement that UFOs seem to be the most popular thing on people's minds. And Trump, the showman, doesn't let many opportunities go by to have a show. So maybe we'll hear about UFOs before the Iran war is settled. Maybe we'll hear about UFOs after the Iran war is settled. But I think pretty soon a lot is going to come out. We may not know exactly, but we're going to get a lot more information. And I just really have to say that I think that those in Congress who are pushing forward with disclosure, they really deserve our appreciation. So it's been my privilege to kind of peek behind the scenes, if you will, at what's been going on there. And I think given my reputation as somebody who is very skeptical about government and the people who are in it, I've been pleasantly surprised with people of apparent, genuine good faith trying to do the right thing. So, do I know what's going to happen in the UFO stuff? No, I don't. I got a couple good pieces of information. I hope it happens, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Yeah, maybe I'll watch a couple more documentaries. Um, Later in the week, I'm going to see Lou Elizondo give a talk in San Francisco. I might get an opportunity to talk to him a little bit. That would be really interesting. But through it all, I'm going to be calm. Okay. And that's one of the things that I just want to say to you. I don't know what's going to happen in the Middle East. I don't know what's going to happen in the UFOs. I don't even know what's going to happen to me. I mean, 2 weeks ago, a tree nearly fell on me. So none of us can really know. And the best that we can do is try to be the best we can for all of those around us. I remember one time I was at a party and it was for health freedom. And so I'm really associated with the health freedom movement. 4 of my books have been published under Robert Kennedy's Children's Health Defense imprint at Skyhorse Publishing. And Kennedy also did the foreword to my most successful book, Plague of Corruption. And I met this young man. He was 23, 24 years old. And we got talking, and it came up that he had read several of my books. And so suddenly, I was the rock star, and he couldn't believe he was talking to me. And I'm going like, yeah, really, I'm an idiot. Why are you getting all excited about talking to me? I don't know shit. But he's 23 years old, and he's looking to impress me, who is supposed to be such a big know-it-all. And he made the comment to me. He goes, yeah, Mr. Heckenlively, every morning when I wake up, I'm immediately on the internet. I'm researching. I'm literally researching from the time I get up until I go to sleep at night. And he said, do you have any other advice for me? And I said, yeah, I do. Stop. Fight the devil for 2 or 3 hours a day. Okay? That's all I do. And, I'm your hero, because there's so much good in the world. And if we're not taking advantage, if we're not appreciating that good in the world, we're not doing what we're here to do. I think I actually said to him, go on a date with a girl. Okay? That's my advice to you. Don't worry about all the corruption in the world, because all that corruption will be there when you take a look at it again. So it's a long-term struggle. I believe in making the world a better place, but I also believe it's going to take a long time. You're not going to know when you hit that moment that you can actually have an effect on the world. Like, I didn't know that me giving that information to Grant Stinchfield would suddenly set the UFO world on fire. That's great. Okay. 2 weeks from now, will they remember my name? Probably not. So I'm not really impressed when I do something that sets the world on fire. I like to put books together, to have a long-term effect, to know that my thoughts will be shared with people for decades to come. But more than that, I'm concerned about being good to the people who are around me, my family, my friends. Um, I'm really interested in having those strong social connections, and whatever is out there in the world with podcasting, news, media, writing. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I want to have that. I like to play in that world. Emphasis on the word play. So, yes, what happens in the greater world is important. and I think you should know about it. But hopefully, you're doing the good things in your own life that make you fun to be around and somebody that others look up to. All right, that's all I got for you today. Have a good day, America. Talk to you later.